The gunshot that killed Olivia Turner's father echoed through the Nevada hills long after his body went cold. But the debt he left behind proved far more deafening than any bullet. She stood now behind the polished mahogany bar of the Silver Spur Saloon in Virginia City, Nevada, her hands red and raw from scrubbing floors since dawn, her father's gambling debts weighing heavier than the whiskey bottles she carried on her worn wooden tray. It was May of 1878, and the spring sunshine streaming through the dusty windows did nothing to warm the chill that lived permanently in Olivia's bones. 3 years she had been here, bound to Marcus Holbrook, the saloon owner who had purchased her father's debts from the men who would have killed her otherwise. She should have felt grateful, she supposed. At least she was alive. At least Holbrook kept the drunken miner's hands off her mostly. At least she had a cot in the back room and enough food to keep from starving. But gratitude felt impossible when every day stretched endlessly before her, identical to the last, with no horizon in sight. The original debt had been $300. With interest and the cost of her room and board, Holbrook claimed she now owed him nearly $800. At the rate he paid her, essentially nothing, she would be an old woman before she earned her freedom. "Girl, you daydreaming again." Holbrook's voice cut through her thoughts like a blade. He was a stocky man with slicked back hair and a permanent scowl that deepened the lines around his mouth. "Table 7 needs service." Olivia nodded quickly, loading her tray with fresh bottles. Table 7 was always trouble. 3 miners who came in every Friday after collecting their pay, already half drunk before they arrived. She approached cautiously, setting down the bottles with practiced efficiency. "Well now, if it isn't our little indentured servant," one of them slurred, reaching for her wrist. "How about you sit with us a spell?" "I cannot," Olivia said firmly, extracting her arm. "Mr. Holbrook needs me behind the bar." "Holbrook can wait," another miner laughed. "Come on, honey, just one drink." The lady said no. The voice came from behind her, low and steady, with an edge that made the miners straighten in their chairs. Olivia turned to find a man she had never seen before standing there, and something in her chest tightened at the sight of him. He was tall, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of storm clouds. Dust covered his dark coat and worn leather boots, suggesting he had ridden far. A revolver hung at his hip, the holster tied down in the manner of someone who knew how to use it. But what struck her most was his face, angular and weathered by sun and wind, with a gentleness in those gray eyes that seemed at odds with his rough appearance. "This is not your concern, stranger," the first miner growled, standing up. His friends rose with him. The man did not move, did not even blink. "The lady is trying to work. You are making that difficult. I suggest you let her do her job." For a long moment, tension crackled through the air like lightning before a storm. Then Holbrook appeared, his hand resting meaningfully on the club he kept behind the bar. "Is there a problem here?" "No problem," the stranger said mildly. "These gentlemen were just sitting back down." The miners grumbled but complied, and Olivia hurried back to the safety of the bar, her heart hammering. The stranger followed her with his eyes, then took a seat at the far end, away from the other patrons. "Who is that?" Olivia whispered to Holbrook. "Nobody I know." "And nobody you need to know either. Stay away from him." Holbrook thrust a glass at her. "Take him a whiskey, then get back here." Olivia approached the stranger's table cautiously. Up close, she could see the weariness etched into his features, the way his shoulders carried some invisible weight. But when he looked up at her, his expression softened. "Thank you," she said quietly, setting down the glass. "You did not have to do that." "Yes, I did." His voice was gentle now, without the steel it had held moments before. "What is your name?" she hesitated. Holbrook had told her not to fraternize with customers beyond what was necessary for service, but something about this man made her want to break that rule. Olivia Turner. I am Yates Crawford. He studied her face for a moment, and she had the strangest sensation that he was seeing past the tired serving girl exterior to something underneath. How long have you worked here, Miss Turner? 3 years. The words came out more bitter than she intended. 3 years, he repeated softly, as if tasting the weight of them. That is a long time. It will be longer still before I am free. She did not know why she was telling him this. Perhaps because he was a stranger, someone she would never see again after tonight. Perhaps because those gray eyes held something that felt like understanding. Turner, get back to work, Holbrook barked. Olivia flinched and hurried away, but she felt Yates Crawford's gaze follow her. For the rest of the evening, she was acutely aware of his presence. He sat quietly, nursing his single whiskey, never calling for another. He did not gamble or carouse like the other men. He simply watched, and somehow she did not feel threatened by his attention. As the night wore on and the crowd thinned, Olivia found herself glancing his way more often. Once, their eyes met across the room and something passed between them, quick as lightning and twice as electric. She looked away quickly, her cheeks burning. It was nearly midnight when Yates finally stood and approached the bar. Holbrook was in the back room counting the night's earnings. The other customers had stumbled out into the darkness, heading for their beds or their mines or wherever drunk men went in the small hours. Miss Turner, Yates said quietly, may I ask you something? Olivia glanced nervously toward the back room. I suppose, but quickly. Your debt to Mr. Holbrook, how much is it? The question took her by surprise. I do not see how that concerns you. Humor me, she bit her lip. $800. Why? Something flickered in his eyes there and gone too quickly to name. 800. That is quite a sum. It started as 300, but the interest. She shook her head. I will never be free of it, he makes sure of that. What if you could be free? The intensity in his voice made her look up sharply. What would you do if you had no debt? That is impossible, she whispered. I have nothing. No family, no skills beyond serving drinks. Even if I could pay it, where would I go? But if you could, he pressed, what would you want? No one had ever asked her that before. Olivia stared at this stranger, this Yates Crawford who had appeared out of nowhere and defended her, and now asked her about dreams she had long ago buried. I would go west, she heard herself say. To California, maybe. I have heard there are opportunities there for women. I could work in a shop or learn a trade. I could build a life that was mine. Yates nodded slowly, as if she had confirmed something he needed to know. That sounds like a good dream, Miss Turner. Dreams are useless things, she said, more harshly than she meant to. I live in the real world, Mr. Crawford, and in the real world I will be here until I am old and worn out and good for nothing. Maybe not. He reached into his coat and pulled out a leather pouch. Before Olivia could ask what he was doing, he set it on the bar with a heavy thunk. Give this to Holbrook. Tell him Yates Crawford paid your debt in full. Olivia stared at the pouch, then at him, her mind refusing to process what was happening. What? No, you cannot. That is not. I do not understand. You do not need to understand. His expression was unreadable. Just take it. Be free, Miss Turner. But why? Her voice cracked. You do not know me. Why would you do this? For a moment, something raw and painful crossed his face. Let us say I owe a debt of my own, one I can never repay to the person it is owed to. Maybe this will balance the scales just a little. I cannot accept this, Olivia said, even as hope surged treacherously in her chest. It is too much. How would I ever repay you? I do not want repayment. He was already backing toward the door. I want you to go to California. I want you to build that life you talked about. Can you do that? Wait, she called, but he was already through the door, disappearing into the darkness beyond the yellow lamplight. "Wait, please." She ran to the entrance, but when she looked out into the street, he was gone. Simply vanished, as if he had never existed at all. Only the pouch on the bar proved he had been real. Olivia stood there, trembling, staring at that leather pouch. Slowly, with shaking hands, she picked it up and loosened the drawstring. Gold coins glinted in the lamplight. She had never seen so much money in her life. "What is this?" Holbrook's voice made her jump. He emerged from the back room, his eyes narrowing as he saw the pouch. "Where did that come from?" "A man. Yates Crawford. He said it was to pay my debt." The words felt unreal in her mouth. Holbrook snatched the pouch from her hands and counted the coins quickly, his expression shifting from suspicion to greed to something more complicated. When he finished, he stared at her with a mixture of disbelief and annoyance. $800 exactly," he said flatly. "Who was this man?" "What did you do?" "Nothing. I did nothing. He just gave it to me and left. Nobody just gives away $800. Holbrook studied her face, looking for deception. "You must have done something." "I swear, Mr. Holbrook, I only spoke to him a few moments. I do not know why he did it." "But he said to tell you that my debt is paid." Holbrook counted the coins again, as if hoping they might multiply or disappear. Finally, he looked up at her, his face twisted with displeasure. "Your father's debt is paid. You are free to go." The words should have filled her with joy, but instead, Olivia felt only confusion and a strange, aching emptiness. "Just like that, just like that," Holbrook said bitterly. He did not like losing his indentured servant, she could tell, but the money was too real to argue with. "You have until morning to clear out, and if you think to steal anything, I will have the sheriff on you so fast your head will spin." "I would never," Olivia said quietly. She turned and walked to her small room in the back, her mind whirling. She packed her few belongings in a canvas bag, her hands moving automatically while her thoughts spun in circles. Yates Crawford. Who was he? Why had he done this? And where had he gone? The questions haunted her through the sleepless hours until dawn. When the sun finally rose, painting the Nevada sky in shades of gold and pink, Olivia Turner walked out of the Silver Spur Saloon a free woman for the first time in 3 years. But freedom felt hollow without understanding. She stood in the dusty street, her bag in her hand, and made a decision. She would not go to California. Not yet. First, she would find Yates Crawford and understand why he had changed her life so completely, then vanished like smoke. She started at the hotel, but the clerk said no one by that name had checked in. The livery stable owner remembered a man fitting his description, said he had ridden in on a gray horse and ridden out again before dawn, heading north. The general store owner thought she might be talking about the cowboy who had bought supplies for a long journey, but he had not given a name. Everywhere she went, Olivia found traces of Yates Crawford, but never the man himself. It was as if he had deliberately covered his tracks, wanting to disappear completely. By midday, she stood at the edge of town, staring at the road that wound north into the mountains. Every practical bone in her body told her to turn around, to use what little money she had saved to buy a coach ticket to California, to start the new life he had purchased for her. But something deeper, something that lived beneath reason, pulled her north. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder and started walking. The road was rough and the sun was merciless, but Olivia had endured worse. She walked for hours, occasionally catching rides from wagons heading in the same direction. By evening, she reached a small mining camp where she traded some mending work for a meal and a space in a barn to sleep. "I am looking for someone," she told the woman who had hired her to mend her husband's shirts. "A man named Yates Crawford, tall, dark hair, gray eyes." "He might have passed through here." The woman frowned thoughtfully. Crawford, you say, name does not ring a bell, but there was a cowboy came through yesterday, bought supplies, and moved on quick. Could be your man. Which way did he go? Further north. Toward Reno, likely. Olivia thanked her and set out again the next morning. Days blurred together as she followed the ghost of Yates Crawford across Nevada. She worked where she could for food and shelter, asking about him in every town and camp. Some people remembered him, others did not. But slowly, the pieces came together. He was a drifter, people said. A man running from something, though no one knew what. He never stayed long in one place. He was good with a gun, but never looked for trouble. He helped people sometimes, in quiet ways, then moved on before they could thank him properly. The more Olivia learned, the more intrigued she became. And beneath the intrigue, something else was growing. She kept remembering the way he had looked at her in the saloon, the gentleness in his voice, the pain that had flashed across his face when she asked why he was helping her. After 2 weeks on the road, she reached Reno. It was bigger than Virginia City, with more saloons and hotels and people. She spent 3 days searching, working as a laundress to pay for a room, asking everyone she met about Yates Crawford. Finally, in a small boarding house on the edge of town, the elderly woman who ran it nodded when Olivia described him. "Oh yes, Mr. Crawford. He stayed here 4 nights. Quiet man, polite, paid in advance and kept to himself." The woman studied Olivia curiously. "Are you looking for him for a particular reason?" "He helped me," Olivia said simply. "I want to thank him." "Well, he left 3 days ago, but I might be able to help you more than most." The woman disappeared into her office and returned with a piece of paper. He wrote down a reference in case anyone came asking about his character. Not many people do that anymore. Said to contact a ranch outside Cimarron, New Mexico. The name here is Crawford Ranch. Olivia's heart leaped. Crawford Ranch, you mean his family? I suppose so, though he never said much about them. Seemed like a man carrying some heavy burden. The woman handed her the paper. "Are you planning to go all the way to New Mexico?" "Yes," Olivia said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "Yes, I am." The journey to Cimarron took 3 weeks. Olivia worked her way south, taking jobs where she could find them, saving every penny. She rode in the back of freight wagons, walked long stretches when she had to, and slowly made her way across the harsh and beautiful landscape. The closer she got to Cimarron, the more nervous she became. What would she say to Yates when she found him? What if he did not want to be found? What if he was angry that she had followed him instead of going to California like he had told her to? But she could not turn back. Not now. She had to know why. She had to see him again. Cimarron sat in a valley in northern New Mexico, surrounded by mountains and vast stretches of grassland. It was June now, and the summer heat shimmered off the earth. Olivia arrived dusty and exhausted, her money nearly gone, her body aching from the long journey. She asked at the general store about Crawford Ranch. The storekeeper, a friendly man with white hair and spectacles, gave her directions. About 5 miles west of town. Big spread, been there for 20 years or more. Old Mr. Crawford died last winter, left the place to his son. You know the family? Not exactly, Olivia said, but I know Yates. Yates? The man's eyebrows rose. Yates Crawford, he is back. I believe so. Why? Is something wrong? The storekeeper exchanged glances with his wife, who had been listening from behind the counter. Yates left Cimarron 5 years ago, swore he would never come back. If he is here now, something must have changed. What happened 5 years ago? But the man just shook his head. Not my story to tell. You will have to ask Yates about that. Olivia thanked him and bought some water and bread with her last few coins. Then she set out walking west, toward Crawford Ranch. The land here was different from Nevada, greener and more lush. Cattle grazed in distant fields, and the mountains rose purple and majestic against the blue sky. Despite her exhaustion, Olivia felt something lift in her chest. It was beautiful country. The ranch house appeared after an hour of walking, a sprawling structure of wood and stone with a wide porch and several outbuildings scattered around it. Horses moved in a corral near the barn, and she could hear the distant lowing of cattle. She approached slowly, suddenly uncertain. What was she doing here? What right did she have to track down a man who had clearly wanted to disappear? But before she could turn back, a figure emerged from the barn. Even at a distance, she recognized the tall frame, the way he moved. Yates Crawford, in work clothes and a battered hat, leading a horse toward the corral. He had not seen her yet. Olivia stood frozen, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Then, as if sensing her presence, Yates turned. The shock on his face was almost comical. He dropped the horse's lead rope and stared at her across the dusty yard, his expression cycling through disbelief, confusion, and something that might have been fear. "Miss Turner," his voice carried across the distance. "What are you doing here? I came to find you." She forced her feet to move, closing the distance between them. "I came to ask why. I told you why." He looked genuinely distressed now. "I told you to go to California to start a new life. Why would you come here?" "Because I needed to understand." "Because no one just gives away $800 and disappears. Because—" She stopped a few feet from him, close enough to see the fine lines around his eyes, the tension in his jaw. "Because I could not stop thinking about you." The admission hung in the air between them. Yates closed his eyes briefly, as if in pain. "You should not have come. Tell me why you did it." She stepped closer. "Tell me the truth, Yates. Why did you pay my debt?" He turned away, retrieving the horse's lead rope with more force than necessary. "It does not matter. It matters to me." "Why?" He whirled back to face her, and she saw anguish in his eyes now. "Why does it matter? You are free. That is all you need to know." "No." Olivia's voice shook, but she held her ground. "I walked across Nevada. I worked in mining camps and rode in freight wagons. I spent every penny I had to get here. The least you can do is tell me the truth." Yates stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, the fight seemed to drain out of him. "Come inside," he said quietly. "This is not a conversation for the yard." She followed him into the ranch house, into a large kitchen with a stone fireplace and sturdy wooden furniture. He poured water from a pitcher into 2 glasses, his hands not quite steady. They sat at the table, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. "5 years ago," Yates began finally, not looking at her, "I left Cimarron because I could not stay. My father and I had a terrible fight. I said things I could never take back. I told him I hated him, that I would never come back, that he could keep his ranch and his expectations and everything else. Then I rode away." He paused, swallowing hard. "I drifted for years. Worked ranches, did some bounty hunting, tried to outrun my guilt, but it followed me everywhere. Then this spring I got word that my father was dying. I rode as fast as I could, but I was too late. He died 3 days before I arrived." "I am sorry," Olivia said softly. "He left me everything, the ranch, the cattle, all of it, and a letter." Yates's voice cracked slightly. "In the letter, he said he forgave me. He said he understood why I left. He said he hoped I would come home and that he had always loved me, even when we fought." Tears slipped down his cheeks now, and he did not bother to wipe them away. "I never got to tell him I was sorry. I never got to make things right. That is something I will carry for the rest of my life." "What does this have to do with me?" Olivia asked gently. "When I saw you in that saloon, trapped by a debt that kept growing, unable to escape no matter how hard you worked, it reminded me of myself. Trapped by my own guilt and pride, unable to go home and make things right until it was too late. I could not save my relationship with my father. He died before I could try. But I could save you. I could give you the chance I never took, the chance to be free before it was too late. Understanding washed over Olivia like a wave. So you paid my debt, you set me free, and then you disappeared because you thought that was the end of it. It should have been the end. He finally looked at her, and the raw emotion in his gray eyes made her breath catch. You were supposed to go to California and build a life and never think about me again. That was what I wanted for you. Freedom. A fresh start. But that is not what I wanted, Olivia said. She reached across the table and took his hand, feeling him tense at the contact. I wanted to know the man who saved me. I wanted to understand why. And now that I do. Now that you do, you should go. But he did not pull his hand away. I have nothing to offer you, Olivia. Just a ranch I barely know how to run and more guilt than one man should carry. You have yourself, she said, and that was enough to change my life completely. That is enough for me to have traveled all this way. Maybe it could be enough for more. You do not know me, he protested weakly. Then let me learn. She squeezed his hand. I have nowhere else to be. No family waiting for me. No job to return to, just a dream of California that feels empty compared to being here with you. Olivia, he whispered, and her name on his lips sent warmth through her entire body. I cannot ask you to stay. You are not asking, I am offering. She stood up, still holding his hand, and moved around the table until she stood in front of him. I am offering to stay here at this ranch and get to know you, to help if you will let me. To see if maybe this feeling between us is real or just gratitude and guilt. It is not just gratitude, Yates said roughly. He stood too, and suddenly they were very close, close enough that she could feel the heat of his body. From the moment I saw you in that saloon, I felt something. I told myself it was pity or recognition of a kindred spirit. But when I rode away, I could not stop thinking about you. I kept wondering if you made it to California, if you were happy, if you ever thought about me the way I thought about you. I thought about you every day, Olivia admitted. Every single day. His hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch gentle despite the calluses on his palm. If you stay, there are things you should know. This ranch is in debt. My father took out loans before he died, trying to keep it going. I have been working to pay them back, but it is slow going. I do not have much money. I do not have much of anything except this land and a lot of hard work ahead. I am not afraid of hard work, Olivia said. I spent 3 years in that saloon. I think I can handle a ranch. A smile tugged at his lips, the first real smile she had seen from him. It transformed his face, softening the hard edges and making him look younger. You might be tougher than you look. I definitely am tougher than I look. His other hand came up to frame her face, and he stared at her as if memorizing every detail. I do not deserve you. I do not deserve this chance, but if you are truly offering it, I am not strong enough to say no. Then say yes, Olivia whispered. Yes. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, but she did not want to pull away. She wanted this more than she had wanted anything in a long time. When his lips met hers, it felt like coming home. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if they were both afraid the other might disappear. Then it deepened, became more certain, and Olivia felt something inside her that had been locked away for years finally open. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Yates rested his forehead against hers. Stay, he said simply. Please stay. I will stay. That evening, Yates showed Olivia around the ranch properly. He explained the debts his father had accumulated, the work that needed to be done, the plans he had to slowly restore Crawford Ranch to profitability. Olivia listened and asked questions and offered suggestions, her mind already working through the problems. You need help, she said finally. You cannot run this place alone. I have 2 ranch hands. Good men been here for years, but you are right, I need more. Then we will hire more. And I can handle the household, the accounts, the things that will free you up to focus on the cattle and the land. Yates looked at her with something like wonder. You would do that, I told you. I am not afraid of hard work, and besides, she smiled at him. I have a personal interest in seeing this ranch succeed now. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her, and she leaned into his strength. For the first time since her father's death, Olivia felt like she might have found a place to belong. The next weeks fell into a rhythm. Olivia took over the household management and dove into the ranch accounts with determination. The debts were larger than Yates had initially admitted, but they were not insurmountable. With careful planning and hard work, the ranch could be profitable again. She woke before dawn each day to make breakfast for Yates and the ranch hands. She kept the house clean, mended clothes, tended a vegetable garden she started behind the house. But she also insisted on learning about the ranch work itself. Yates taught her to ride properly, showed her how to check cattle for illness, explained the business of buying and selling livestock. You are a quick learner, he said one afternoon as they rode the fence line together, checking for breaks. I should not be surprised. You survived 3 years with Holbrook. That takes intelligence and strength. It took stubbornness mostly, Olivia replied, and the ability to endure things I did not like, but this is different. This work has purpose. It is building something, not just surviving. Is it enough? Yates asked quietly. Are you happy here? She turned in her saddle to look at him. They had been living and working together for nearly a month now, and every day she felt the connection between them growing stronger. They had kissed a few more times, sweet stolen moments that left her breathless. But they had not spoken about what they were to each other, what the future might hold. I am happy, she said honestly. Happier than I have been in years. Are you? Yes. He guided his horse closer to hers, reaching out to take her hand. But I worry that I am taking advantage of your gratitude. That you feel obligated to stay because of what I did. Yates Crawford, if you think I am doing all this work out of obligation, you are not as smart as I thought. She squeezed his hand. I am here because I want to be. Because every day I wake up excited to see what we will accomplish. Because every time you smile at me, I feel like my heart might burst. That is not obligation. That is something else entirely. What is it? His gray eyes were intense on hers. I think you know. I want to hear you say it. Olivia took a breath, gathering her courage. I am falling in love with you. Maybe I started falling that first night in the saloon. Maybe it happened on the road as I followed you across Nevada. Or maybe it has been happening every day since I arrived here. But it is happening, and I do not want it to stop. Yates dismounted in one smooth motion and came to her horse's side. He lifted his arms and she slid down into them, letting him hold her weight as he lowered her to the ground. Then his arms were tight around her and his lips were on hers, and the kiss held nothing back. It was fierce and desperate and full of everything they had not yet said. I love you, he said against her mouth. I have loved you since I saw you standing in that saloon, tired and trapped but still fighting. I love your strength and your courage and the way you attack problems instead of running from them. I love how you sing while you cook and how you talk to the horses like they understand you. I love everything about you, Olivia Turner. She was crying now, happy tears that she did not bother to hide. I love you too, so much it scares me sometimes. Do not be scared. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. Be mine, marry me. Help me build this ranch into something we can be proud of. Give me the chance to spend every day for the rest of my life making you happy. Yes, she said, laughing through her tears. Yes, yes, yes. They married in Cimarron 2 weeks later in a small church with the ranch hands and a few townspeople as witnesses. Olivia wore a simple cream-colored dress she had bought with money from selling some of her mending work. Yates wore his best suit, his hair neatly combed, his eyes shining as he watched her walk down the aisle. The preacher spoke about love and commitment and building a life together. Yates slid a simple gold band onto her finger, and she did the same for him. And when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, the kiss they shared felt like a promise and a beginning and everything good in the world. The celebration afterward was modest but joyful. The townspeople who had known Yates's father welcomed Olivia warmly, clearly glad that the ranch would continue. The storekeeper and his wife brought food. Someone brought a fiddle, and there was dancing in the yard as the sun set. "Are you happy, Mrs. Crawford?" Yates whispered in her ear as they swayed together to the music. "Deliriously," Olivia replied, "though it still feels strange to be called that, Mrs. Crawford, a married woman, a rancher's wife." "You are more than just a rancher's wife," Yates said seriously. "You are my partner in every sense of the word. I could not do this without you." "We can do it together," she corrected. "Whatever comes, we will face it together." And there was much that came. The summer was brutal, with drought that dried up streams and made the cattle restless. Yates and Olivia worked from dawn until well past dusk, hauling water and moving the herd to better grazing. The debts loomed over them like storm clouds, due dates approaching with terrifying speed. But they faced it together. Olivia took in mending and laundry from townspeople to bring in extra money. Yates sold off some of the cattle, getting good prices that helped pay down the loans. They scrimped and saved and worked until their bodies ached. At night, exhausted and sore, they would collapse into bed together. And there, in the darkness, they would find comfort in each other's arms. Yates would hold her close and tell her stories about growing up on the ranch, about his mother who had died when he was young, about the relationship with his father that had been complicated but full of love underneath the conflict. Olivia told him about her own childhood, about her mother who had died of fever when she was 10, about her father who had loved her but could not stop gambling. She told him about the fear she had lived within the saloon, the sense of being trapped with no escape. "You never have to feel trapped again," Yates promised. "This is your home. This is your land as much as mine. You are my equal partner in everything." And he proved it in his actions. When they met with the banker about the loans, he insisted Olivia be there, her name on the papers alongside his. When they made decisions about the ranch, he asked for her input and listened seriously to her suggestions. When townspeople came calling, he introduced her proudly as his wife and partner, not just the woman who kept his house. By autumn, the ranch was starting to turn a profit again. It was small, barely enough to cover the loan payments with a little left over, but it was progress. More importantly, word was spreading that Crawford Ranch was well run and reliable. Orders for cattle started coming in. Buyers who had stopped working with Yates's father when the old man got sick were willing to give the son a chance. "We are going to make it," Olivia said one evening as they reviewed the accounts together. "It will take time, but we are going to save the ranch." "We already have saved it," Yates replied. He was sitting behind her, his arms wrapped around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder so they could both see the ledger. "The day you walked into that barn and decided to stay, you saved it. You saved me." Olivia twisted in his arms to face him. "We saved each other. That is how this works." "Is it?" His smile was tender. "I thought I saved you by paying your debt. Then you saved me by tracking me down and refusing to leave. How many times can two people save each other? As many times as necessary," she said firmly. "That is what love is. Saving each other over and over in little ways and big ones, every single day." He kissed her then, slow and deep, and she melted into him. These moments when the work was done and they could simply be together were her favorite. In his arms, she felt cherished and safe and wildly, gloriously alive. Winter came, bringing cold winds and snow that blanketed the ranch in white. The work was different but no less demanding. They spent long hours tending to the cattle, making sure they had food and water despite the frozen ground. The ranch hands helped, but there was always more to do. Olivia learned to move through the cold with determination, bundled in layers of clothing and Yates's spare coat that was too big for her but wonderfully warm. She learned to break ice on water troughs and to recognize the signs of a cow in distress. She learned to cook hearty meals that would sustain them through the long, cold days. And in the evenings, she and Yates would sit by the fire, her feet in his lap as he rubbed warmth back into them, and they would talk about their plans for the future. More cattle in the spring. Repairs to the barn. Maybe hiring another ranch hand or two as the operation grew. Dreams that felt possible now, reachable, real. "I want children someday," Yates said one night, the words coming out of nowhere. "I know we have not talked about it. I know we have so much to deal with already. But I think about it sometimes. Little ones running around the ranch, teaching them to ride, watching them grow up on this land." Olivia's heart swelled. She had thought about it too in quiet moments. Imagined a child with Yates's gray eyes or her dark hair. Imagined the family they could build together. "I want that too," she said softly. "Not right now, maybe, but someday, when the ranch is more stable, when we have time to breathe." "Someday," Yates agreed. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "We have time, we have the rest of our lives." That winter, tragedy struck one of their neighbors. The Henderson family, who lived on the ranch to the north, lost their home to a fire. The whole family escaped alive, but they lost everything else. Clothes, furniture, supplies, all gone in the flames. Without hesitation, Yates and Olivia opened their home. The Hendersons had 3 children, and for 2 months, all 9 people lived in the Crawford Ranch house. It was crowded and chaotic, and sometimes overwhelming. But it was also full of laughter and warmth, and the kind of community that made hard times bearable. Olivia found she had a gift for managing the chaos. She organized the children into helping with chores, taught them games to play on cold days when they could not go outside, told them stories in the evening while their parents worked with Yates to rebuild. The Henderson couple was grateful beyond words, but Olivia brushed off their thanks. "You would do the same for us," she said simply. That is what neighbors do. When the Hendersons finally moved into their rebuilt home in early spring, there were tears and tight hugs all around. The children did not want to leave, and secretly, Olivia found she would miss having them around. The house felt quiet after they left. "You were wonderful with those children," Yates observed that night. "Natural mother material." "You think so?" Olivia felt a flutter of hope in her chest. "I know so." He kissed her temple. "But like you said, when we are ready, when the time is right." Spring brought new life to the ranch. Calves were born, the grass turned green, and the financial situation continued to improve. Yates and Olivia worked together seamlessly now, anticipating each other's needs, communicating without words after months of shared labor and love. In May, exactly 1 year after Yates had walked into the Silver Spur Saloon and changed her life, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but she waited to be sure before telling Yates. When she finally shared the news, his reaction was everything she had hoped for. He whooped with joy, picked her up and spun her around, then immediately put her down carefully as if she might break. "Are you sure? Are you feeling all right? You need to sit down. Should you be working so hard?" She laughed at his sudden protectiveness. "I am fine." Women have been having babies while working for all of human history. I am not going to stop doing my share. But you need to be careful. You need to rest more. You need. He trailed off, looking overwhelmed. I have no idea what you need. I know about cattle, not babies. Then we will learn together, Olivia said, taking his hands. Just like we have learned everything else. Together. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the summer. Olivia continued working, though she let Yates convince her to take on lighter tasks as she grew larger. She focused more on the household and the accounts, less on the physical ranch work. Yates hovered anxiously, which she found both annoying and endearing. The townspeople rallied around them. The women of Cimarron brought baby clothes and blankets and advice, sometimes too much advice. The doctor checked on her regularly, pronouncing mother and baby healthy. Even the ranch hands got into the spirit, building a beautiful cradle as a surprise gift. "You have built something here," Yates said one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset. His hand rested on her swollen belly, feeling the baby kick. "Not just a ranch, a real community. People care about us, about this baby. My father would have loved to see this." "I wish I could have known him," Olivia said wistfully. "He raised an incredible son. We had our problems. But yes, he was a good man, stubborn and proud, but good." Yates was quiet for a moment. "I think he would have liked you very much. I think he would have been glad I came home. Do you still feel guilty?" She had learned to recognize the shadow that sometimes crossed his face when he thought about his father. "Sometimes. But less than I used to. I think you were right about love being about saving each other over and over. Maybe I could not save my relationship with him in the end, but I am honoring his memory by saving this ranch. By building the life he wanted for me. That has to count for something." "It counts for everything," Olivia assured him. Their son was born in November, during an early snowstorm that made the doctor grumble about the timing. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Yates looked terrified, holding her hand and looking helpless. But Olivia was strong, and when the baby finally arrived screaming lustily, she felt a surge of triumph along with the love. They named him William, after Yates's father. Little William Crawford, with his mother's dark hair and his father's gray eyes, immediately became the center of their universe. "He is perfect," Yates whispered, holding his son for the first time with shaking hands. "You are perfect. Thank you for this gift, Olivia. Thank you for everything." She was exhausted but happy, watching her husband bond with their newborn. "We made him together. We will raise him together. Another adventure for us to figure out." And figure it out they did, through sleepless nights and endless diaper changes and moments of pure terror when the baby cried and they did not know why. But they also experienced joy beyond measure. William's first smile, his first laugh, the way he tracked their movements with curious eyes. Every milestone felt like a miracle. The ranch continued to thrive. With the loans paid off and the operation running smoothly, they even managed to hire 2 more ranch hands, taking pressure off Yates. Olivia gradually returned to her full duties, though now she often worked with William strapped to her back in a sling one of the townswomen had made for her. "I never imagined I could be this happy," she told Yates one night as they lay in bed, William sleeping peacefully in his cradle nearby. "When I was in that saloon, my future looked so bleak, and now look at us. A ranch, a son, a life full of purpose and love. You earned this happiness," Yates said firmly. "You fought for it. You walked across Nevada to find answers. You took a chance on a broken man with a failing ranch. You worked until your hands bled to help save it. This is not luck, Olivia. This is you creating the life you wanted." "We created it," she corrected. "I could not have done any of this without you. You paid my debt when you had no reason to. You took a chance on me. You made me your equal partner." You love me with everything you have. We built this together. Together, he agreed, pulling her close. Always together. Years passed in the way they do when life is full and good. William grew into an energetic, curious boy who loved the ranch and the animals and following his father around. Yates proved to be a patient, loving father, teaching his son about the land and the cattle and the importance of hard work. When William was 3, Olivia gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah. She had her father's coloring but her mother's fierce independence, apparent even as an infant. 2 years after Sarah came another son, Robert, quieter than his siblings but with a sweet nature that made everyone love him instantly. The ranch house that had once felt too large for 2 people now rang with children's laughter. Olivia often thought about that lonely girl in the Virginia City saloon, unable to see past the next day of drudgery. She wished she could tell that girl that everything would be all right. That freedom was coming. That love was waiting, even if it arrived in the most unexpected way. Yates remained the man she had fallen in love with, steady and hardworking and deeply devoted to his family. The guilt he carried about his father faded over the years, though it never completely disappeared. Instead, it transformed into determination to be the father his children needed, to never let pride or stubbornness keep him from the people he loved. On their 10th anniversary, they stood together on the porch they had stood on so many times before, watching their children play in the yard. The ranch was prosperous now, one of the most successful in the region. They had built something that would last, that they could pass on to their children. "You ever think about that night in the saloon?" Yates asked, his arm around her waist. "About how random it was that I walked in right then. How easily we might never have met." "I think about it sometimes," Olivia admitted, "but I do not believe it was random. I think you were meant to walk in that night. I think I was meant to follow you. Some things are just destined." "You think we were destined?" His smile was teasing, but his eyes were serious. "I do. You needed to save someone to work through your guilt. I needed someone to believe I was worth saving. We were both broken in our own ways, and somehow we fit together perfectly. That feels like more than chance." "Maybe you are right." He turned her in his arms, kissing her with the same passion he had shown from the beginning. "All I know for certain is that paying your debt was the best $800 I ever spent." "Only $800? She pretended to be offended. "I think I am worth at least 900. He laughed and kissed her again, and their children ran up demanding attention, and the moment dissolved into the happy chaos of family life. But later, when the children were asleep and they lay together in the darkness, Yates held her close and whispered against her hair, "I would have paid any price for you. 1,000 times over. You are my everything, Olivia Crawford, my partner, my love, my salvation. Thank you for refusing to go to California. Thank you for tracking me down. Thank you for taking a chance on a difficult man with a failing ranch and more baggage than anyone should carry. Thank you for walking into that saloon," Olivia whispered back. "Thank you for seeing past the serving girl to the woman underneath. Thank you for giving me freedom and then giving me a reason to use it. Thank you for building this beautiful life with me. Always," he promised, "for the rest of our lives," and he kept that promise. Through good years and hard ones, through the joys of watching their children grow and the sorrows that inevitably come with life, through every challenge and triumph, they stayed together. Partners in every sense of the word, bound by love and respect, and the memory of a chance encounter that changed everything. The ranch grew and prospered. William eventually took over most of the day-to-day operations, proving to have his father's skill with cattle and his mother's head for business. Sarah married a lawyer from Santa Fe but remained close, visiting often with her own children. Robert discovered a talent for horses, and started a breeding program that brought additional income to the ranch. Yates and Olivia grew old together, their hair turning white, their hands becoming gnarled with arthritis, but their love remaining as strong as ever. They sat on that same porch in their later years, holding hands and watching their grandchildren play, marveling at how much their lives had changed since that night in Virginia City. "You have any regrets?" Olivia asked him once, when they were both well into their 60s. "Anything you wish you had done differently?" Yates considered the question seriously, as he always did. "I wish I had reconciled with my father before he died. That will always be my one great regret, but everything else? No, especially not walking into that saloon and finding you." "I regret nothing either," Olivia said contentedly. "Well, perhaps I regret not learning to like whiskey. You would think after all these years on a cattle ranch I would have developed a taste for it." He laughed, that wonderful laugh she still loved to hear after all these decades. "You are perfect exactly as you are. Though I admit, watching you sip tea while the ranch hands drink whiskey is always amusing." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind only possible between two people who had shared a lifetime. The sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Somewhere in the house, they could hear their family preparing dinner, voices raised in conversation and laughter. "We did well, did we not?" Yates said quietly. "We built something good here." "We built something extraordinary," Olivia corrected. "A family, a legacy, a love that will outlast us both. Our great-grandchildren will work this land someday, and they will know the story of how it was saved. How a mysterious cowboy walked into a saloon and paid a debt and changed two lives forever. They will probably think it is too romantic to be true. Let them think what they like. We know the truth. We lived it." As night fell and the stars began to appear, Yates helped Olivia to her feet. They moved slowly now, their bodies no longer young and strong. But they moved together, supporting each other, just as they always had. Inside, their family waited. Children and grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren, all gathered under one roof. The noise and love and life that filled the Crawford Ranch house was the legacy Olivia and Yates had built together, brick by brick, day by day, starting from that moment when a stranger's kindness and a woman's courage had intersected in a Virginia City saloon. Years later, when Yates's health finally began to fail, Olivia never left his side. She held his hand through the pain, told him stories about their life together, reminded him of every beautiful moment they had shared. And when the end came, peaceful and gentle, his last words were for her. "Thank you," he whispered, his gray eyes still clear and focused on her face, "for everything, for being brave enough to follow me, for building this life with me, for loving me." "Thank you for saving me," she whispered back, tears streaming down her face, "for seeing me, for loving me, for giving me everything I never knew I needed." He smiled one last time, squeezed her hand, and then he was gone. Olivia sat with him for a long time after, holding his hand and mourning the loss of her partner, her love, her other half. But grief, though profound, could not erase the joy they had shared. At his funeral, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, by friends and neighbors and the community they had built, Olivia told the story one more time. About the mysterious cowboy who paid her debt and vanished, about tracking him across Nevada, about finding love in the most unexpected place. "He saved my life," she said, her voice strong despite her age. "Not just by paying that debt, but by showing me what was possible. By being a man of honor and kindness and courage, by loving me with everything he had. And in return, I hope I saved him too. From his guilt, from his loneliness, from a life half-lived. We saved each other, over and over again for 50 years. That is what real love looks like. Olivia lived 3 more years after Yates passed, staying active on the ranch until the very end. She taught her great-grandchildren to read, told them stories about the old days, made sure they understood the value of hard work and love and treating people with respect. And when her own time came, she went peacefully in her sleep, dreaming of a tall cowboy with gray eyes and a gentle smile. They buried her next to Yates on a hill overlooking the ranch. Their headstones stood side by side, just as they had stood in life. And though they were gone, their legacy lived on. The ranch they had saved together continued to thrive, passed down through generations. The love they had built did not die but multiplied, spreading out through children and grandchildren and beyond. On quiet evenings when the wind blew just right, the people of Crawford Ranch sometimes swore they could hear laughter on the porch. 2 voices, intertwined, happy and free. And in those moments, they remembered the story. The indentured girl and the mysterious cowboy. The debt that was paid and the love that grew from a single act of kindness. A reminder that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. That freedom is not just the absence of chains but the presence of choice. And that true love, once found, never really ends. The Crawford family remained prominent in Cimarron for generations. They were known as fair employers, good neighbors, and people who remembered where they came from. The story of Olivia and Yates became family legend, told and retold at gatherings, passed down as an heirloom more valuable than gold. And somewhere, in whatever place exists beyond this world, 2 souls walked hand in hand across an eternal ranch, their love undiminished by death, their bond unbreakable even by time. The mysterious cowboy and the woman he had saved, who had saved him in return, together forever in the way they had always been meant to be. Their story was complete, their ending happy, their love eternal.